The signal from the forgotten station. A discovery in the dark. Captain Elena Rivas floated weightless in the command center of the human exploration vessel Wanderer's Hope. Her eyes scanned the holographic displays that surrounded her like glowing butterflies in the darkness of space. For 3 months, her crew had been mapping the outer edges of the Kepler belt, a region where no human had ventured before. It was lonely work, the kind that made you question why you'd left Earth's warm embrace for the cold silence of the void. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," called out Junior Officer Marcus Webb from his station. His voice carried a tremor of excitement that immediately caught Elena's attention. She pushed off gently, gliding across the zero-gravity chamber to hover beside Marcus. On his screen, a series of repeating signals pulsed with rhythmic precision. It wasn't random cosmic noise or the whisper of distant stars. This was artificial, deliberate, and impossibly old. "How far?" Elena asked, her heart beginning to race. 23 light hours. "It's coming from what looks like an abandoned station," Marcus replied, his fingers dancing across the interface to refine the image. "Captain, based on the decay patterns in the signal, I'd estimate this thing has been broadcasting for at least 10,000 years. The number hung in the air like a weight. 10,000 years. Long before humanity had built pyramids or discovered fire's full potential, something had been out here, calling into the darkness." The decision to investigate. Elena gathered her crew in the briefing room. 7 faces looked back at her, representing the best that humanity could offer. There was Dr. Sarah Chan, the xenobiologist whose curiosity burned brighter than any star. Beside her sat engineer Dmitry Kozlov, a man who could fix anything with spare parts and determination. The others, pilots, scientists, specialists, all carried the same expression, wonder mixed with caution. "We have a choice," Elena began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was proposing. "We can mark this location, report it to command, and continue our mission. Or we can investigate. I won't lie to you, approaching an unknown alien structure carries risks we can't fully calculate." Dr. Chen spoke first, her eyes bright with excitement. "Captain, this could be the discovery of the millennium. First contact with an alien civilization, even an ancient one, could change everything we know about our place in the universe. Or it could be a trap," countered Lieutenant James Park, the security chief. His job was to imagine worst-case scenarios, and he was very good at his job. "We don't know what we're dealing with. This signal could be a lure, a warning, or something beyond our comprehension." Dmitry leaned back in his chair, his weathered hands folded across his chest. "Everything worth doing carries risk. We're explorers. If we run from every unknown, we might as well have stayed home." Elena looked around the table, seeing the determination in their faces. These weren't people who frightened easily. They had volunteered for a mission that would take them farther from home than any humans before them. They were ready. "We investigate," Elena decided. "But carefully. Red alert protocols. Nobody takes unnecessary chances." Marcus, set course for the station. "Everyone else, prepare your departments. We arrive in 16 hours. Approaching the ancient structure. The station materialized from the darkness like a ghost from humanity's distant future. It was enormous, easily 5 times the size of Earth's largest orbital platform. The structure twisted in ways that seemed to defy physics, with sections that appeared to fold in on themselves, creating impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. "I'm reading no power signatures," Marcus reported from his station. "But that signal is still broadcasting. It's running on something we can't detect." Dr. Chen pressed her face close to the viewport, her breath fogging the glass. "The architecture is unlike anything in our databases. See those patterns on the hull? They're not decorative, they're mathematical formulas. Incredibly complex ones." Elena made her decision. "Dmitry, Sarah, James, you're with me. We're taking the shuttle across. Marcus, you have command while we're gone. If anything happens, if this station shows any sign of hostility, you jump away immediately. Don't wait for us. Captain, I can't, Marcus began to protest. That's an order, Marcus. The mission and the crew come first. Always. Inside the alien station. The docking process took 2 hours of careful maneuvering. The station's ports were designed for ships of different proportions, but Dmitri managed to create an adapter using spare parts and sheer determination. When the airlock finally pressurized, the 4 humans stood in their suits, staring at the entrance to an alien world. The interior of the station defied expectations. Instead of the sterile metal corridors they'd anticipated, they found themselves in spaces that seemed to shift and breathe. The walls were covered in that same mathematical writing they'd seen outside, but here it glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Atmosphere is breathable, Dr. Chen announced, checking her readings with disbelief. Oxygen, nitrogen, trace gases, it's almost identical to Earth's standard. But that's impossible. This station is ancient. Maybe it adjusted when it detected us, James suggested, his weapon held ready but not aimed. Adaptive technology responding to biological signatures. They moved deeper into the station, following the source of the signal. Each chamber they passed through held wonders that would take lifetimes to study. Machines that seemed to be growing rather than built. Containers filled with swirling mists that their scanners couldn't identify. And everywhere, that writing, those formulas, promising knowledge that humanity wasn't ready to comprehend. Finally, they reached the central chamber. It was vast, a sphere that stretched hundreds of meters in every direction. At its center floated a crystalline structure that pulsed with inner light, the source of the signal that had called them across the stars. Dr. Chen approached cautiously, her scanner held before her like a shield. Captain, I'm reading massive data storage. This isn't just a signal beacon. It's a library. A database of unimaginable size. Can you access it? Elena asked. Sarah nodded slowly. I think so. The interface seems to be adaptive. It's already beginning to translate into formats we can understand. It's like it's been waiting for someone to find it. The knowledge within. As Dr. Chen began the connection process, images began to flood the chamber. Holographic projections showed them the history of the beings who had built this station. They called themselves the architects, and they had been exploring the universe when humanity's ancestors were still single-celled organisms swimming in Earth's ancient oceans. The architects had been peaceful, curious, and incredibly advanced. They had mapped thousands of galaxies, encountered hundreds of intelligent species, and accumulated knowledge that spanned eons. But they had also discovered something terrible, a cosmic cycle of destruction that periodically swept through the universe, wiping out advanced civilizations like a gardener pruning overgrown plants. They knew they were going to die, Sarah whispered, her voice filled with sadness. This station, it's not just a library. It's a gift. They left behind everything they learned, everything they discovered, hoping that someday, someone would find it and perhaps survive what they could not. Elena felt the weight of that responsibility settle on her shoulders. The architects had left humanity an incredible gift, but also a warning. Somewhere out in the vast darkness, the force that had destroyed them was still waiting, still cycling through its pattern of cosmic extinction. How long do we have? Elena asked. Dr. Chen's fingers flew across her interface, pulling data from the architect's calculations. When she looked up, her face was pale. Based on their timeline and adjusting for the time that's passed, approximately 300 years. Maybe less. The chamber fell silent except for the gentle pulse of the crystal at its center. Humanity had been given a chance, a head start, access to technology and knowledge that would take thousands of years to develop naturally. But they had also been given a countdown to potential extinction. Lieutenant Park broke the silence. So what do we do? Elena straightened her shoulders, feeling the mantle of leadership settle more firmly. We learn everything we can. We take this knowledge back to Earth. And we prepare. The architects couldn't survive what's coming, but maybe we can. We're human. We adapt. We overcome. We survive. She looked around at her crew, seeing her own determination reflected in their faces. They were explorers, yes, but now they were something more. They were humanity's first defense against a threat that had destroyed civilizations beyond counting. "Let's get to work," Elena commanded. "We have a species to save." The human difference. The journey home. The Wanderer's hope burned through space at maximum velocity, its cargo hold filled with crystalline data cores that contained the sum knowledge of the architects. Captain Elena Rivas stood in the command center, watching the stars streak past, and felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her like a physical force. It had been 6 weeks since they'd left the ancient station. 6 weeks of downloading, cataloging, and trying to comprehend technology so advanced it seemed like magic. Dr. Sarah Chen had barely slept, her eyes growing hollow as she absorbed page after page of alien mathematics and physics that rewrote everything humanity thought it knew about the universe. "Captain, incoming transmission from Earth Command," Marcus Webb announced. "They're demanding a full report. The preliminary data we sent has caused quite a stir." Elena nodded. "I bet it has. Put them through." Admiral Patricia Okonkwo's stern face appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Elena could see the chaos of Earth Space Command headquarters, dozens of officers rushing between stations, screens displaying the architect's data, and the unmistakable tension of people who had just learned their entire species was on a cosmic countdown to extinction. "Captain Rivas, your discovery has created a panic situation," the Admiral said without preamble. "Half the governments on Earth want to keep this quiet. The other half want to start building generation ships immediately. We need more than fragments. We need everything." "You'll have it, Admiral. We're carrying terabytes of data, construction plans, weapons schematics, scientific theories that will revolutionize everything from medicine to space travel. But there's something you need to understand." Elena paused, choosing her words carefully. "The architects were more advanced than us by thousands of years. They had all this knowledge, all this technology, and they still couldn't survive. We need to figure out what we have that they didn't. The human advantage." Back on Earth, the world transformed overnight. The architect's gift didn't remain secret long, something that significant couldn't be contained. Instead of causing panic, however, humanity surprised itself. The knowledge of a shared threat, of a cosmic deadline, unified the species in a way that no politician or philosopher had ever managed. Dr. Chen found herself standing before the United Nations Assembly, explaining the architect's technology to representatives from every nation. "The architects were brilliant," she said, her voice carrying through the vast chamber. "They understood physics at a level we can barely comprehend. They could manipulate spacetime, create matter from energy, and travel between stars as easily as we cross a room. But they had one critical flaw." She pulled up a holographic display showing the architects themselves, tall, graceful beings who looked like they were carved from starlight. They were a singular culture. One way of thinking, one approach to problems, one philosophy applied across their entire civilization. When they encountered the cosmic threat, they tried to solve it the only way they knew how, through pure logic and scientific method. A hand raised in the audience. The delegate from Brazil, Minister Carlos Santos, stood. "Dr. Chen, are you suggesting that their strength was their weakness?" "Exactly. They were too similar, too unified. When their approach failed, they had no backup plan, no alternative perspective." Sarah smiled, and it was the first genuine smile she'd worn in weeks. "But we're human. We're messy. We argue. We have hundreds of different cultures, thousands of different philosophies, millions of different ways of seeing problems. Where the architects saw one solution, we'll see 1,000. The Council of Humanity." Elena watched the broadcast from the newly constructed orbital station that humanity had built using the architect's blueprints. In just 8 months, working with a unity that would have seemed impossible before the discovery, humanity had transformed its industrial capacity. Shipyards that once built cargo vessels now constructed warships. Factories that produced consumer goods now manufactured weapons that could crack planets. But it wasn't just military preparation. Elena had fought hard to ensure that humanity's response was multifaceted, true to Dr. Chen's words about human diversity being their strength. "Report, Dmitri," Elena said to her chief engineer, who now oversaw the largest construction project in human history. Dmitri's weathered face appeared on her screen, and despite the exhaustion in his eyes, he was grinning. "Captain, or should I say Coordinator Rivas now, you need to see this." Dock 17. Elena launched herself through the zero-gravity corridors, arriving at the viewing platform breathless with anticipation. What she saw made her heart skip a beat. Hanging in space was a vessel unlike anything the architects had ever built. It was massive, yes, incorporating their technology for shields and weapons and faster-than-light travel. But it was distinctly human in design, asymmetric, adaptable, with sections that could be reconfigured on the fly. Where the architects had built elegant, perfect ships, humanity had built something that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts by a dozen different cultures working together. And that was exactly the point. "We call her harmony in chaos," Dmitri said proudly. "She's got Japanese meditation chambers next to Brazilian fusion reactors. Canyon-designed weapons systems integrated with Russian shield technology. Indian navigation algorithms working alongside Australian sensor arrays. She's a mess, Captain. And she's perfect." The test of fire. 270 years passed faster than anyone expected. Humanity spread through the stars, building not one fleet but a dozen different ones, each representing a different philosophical approach to survival. Some built massive defensive stations. Others created fleets of small, mobile strike craft. Some focused on weapons. Others on shields. Some prepared to fight. Others prepared to hide. And a few, the ones Elena quietly supported, prepared to do something the architects had never considered: talk. When the cosmic threat finally arrived, it came as the architects' records had predicted, a wave of destruction that swept through space, consuming everything in its path. Automated systems older than galaxies, programmed with a purpose so ancient that even the architects hadn't understood it, pruned the universe of advanced life to prevent some ultimate catastrophe. The first human fleet engaged immediately, the warriors, armed with weapons that bent physics itself. They fought bravely and were annihilated in minutes. The second fleet activated their hiding technology, but the enemy's sensors were too advanced. They died in hours. But then something unprecedented happened. The third fleet, led by Elena Rivas herself aboard a ship crewed by diplomats, philosophers, and linguists, did something the architects had never tried. They sent a message, not in the language of mathematics or physics, but in the language of music, art, and emotion. They broadcast humanity's chaos, its diversity, its beautiful, messy inability to think with one voice. And the enemy paused. For the first time in eons, the cosmic cleanser encountered something that confused it. The architects had been predictable, logical, easily categorized as a threat to be removed. But humanity? Humanity was noise. Humanity was disorder. Humanity was impossible to predict or fully understand because humans couldn't even fully understand themselves. "It's listening," Dr. Chen whispered from her station, now an elderly woman but still driven by the same curiosity that had brought her to the architect's station so long ago. "It's actually listening. The new beginning." The negotiation took months. Humanity lost more ships, more lives, but slowly, painfully, they convinced the cosmic threat of something the architects never could, that chaos wasn't a flaw to be eliminated but a feature to be preserved. That diversity, disagreement, and disorder were not signs of a species that needed pruning but of one that could adapt, evolve, and surprise even themselves. In the end, humanity didn't defeat the cosmic threat. They befriended it. They showed it that a universe filled with different voices, different ideas, and different approaches to problems was stronger than one that spoke with a single voice. Years later, Elena stood in the memorial garden built on Earth, surrounded by monuments to the fallen. The architect's gift had saved humanity, but not in the way anyone expected. It wasn't their technology or their knowledge that made the difference. It was the contrast, seeing how the architects had failed allowed humanity to see what made them special. "We're still messy," Elena said to the holographic image of Dr. Chen, who had passed away peacefully the year before. "We still argue. We still disagree about everything. And thank whatever cosmic force is listening for that." Above her, ships launched into space, human ships, but also ships crewed by a dozen species that humanity had now encountered and welcomed. The galaxy was learning what it meant to be messy, chaotic, and beautifully diverse. The architects had given humanity knowledge. But humanity had given the universe something far more valuable, the understanding that survival didn't come from perfection, but from the courage to be imperfect together. And that, Elena thought as she watched the stars, was the most human thing of all.